Tonight, we are going to look at Lesson 5-8 on solving equations by multiplying fractions. In tonight's lesson, we have two objectives. First, you will be able to solve equations by multiplying fractions. And second, you will be able to solve equations by multiplying mixed numbers. Alright, so in the past, we've talked about how to solve a problem like this. 12 times x is 144. And sometimes it works better to write it out that way. 12 times x is 144. Well, to do this, or to solve for x, you always do the opposite operation. So if they're multiplying by 12, you divide. And you get x is the same as 12. Alright, so that's what we learned back in chapter 3 or 4. Tonight, we're going to look at solving something like this. 5 times a is the same thing as 1/7. Now, to do this, what we want to get, well, a by itself. Instead of just dividing by 5 because we have a fraction over here, what we can do is multiply each side of an equation by the reciprocal of that coefficient. And remember, a coefficient is just that number being multiplied by that variable. So in this case, the coefficient is 5. So if we want to do the reciprocal, right now we have 5 over 1 times a. I just switched that to a fraction. 5a is the same as 5 over 1. Well, to do the reciprocal of 5 over 1, that's when they flip it. So you do 1/5. And if you do it to one side, you do it to the other. Now the reason this works is because 1 times 5 is 5, and down here, 5 times 5 is 5. And 5 over 5 is the same thing as 1. So here, when we do that, we get 1a. We're left with just an a is the same as, and now we multiply. 1 times 1 is 1, 7 times 5 is 35. A is 1/35. So it's your turn now. Go ahead and solve this one. Solve for 7y. So 7 times y is the same as 1/3. Go ahead and pause me now. All right, let's see what you got. Again, I'm going to first make it as a fraction, so 7 over 1. Then I multiply by the reciprocal, which is 1/7. And I do that to both sides. Those make 1, y, and then you get 1 over 21. Y is 1/21. Now, this is another way to say it. Sometimes, though, they just give you a fraction. They tell you solve if 2/5 times w is 13/15. Well, in this case, they already have a fraction, so you don't have to put anything over 1. You just still multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 2/5 is 5/2. Because again, you get 10 over 10, which is 1. So 1w. And I do it to the other side, 5/2. Now, you could multiply them as they are, 13 times 5, and then divide it by 15 times 2. Or else, what they're telling you up here is, remember, if they're across from each other and they have common factors, you can simplify. For example, 5 and 15 both share a factor of 5. So I could divide each one of those by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3. If I reduce right away, I won't have to do it at the end. So 13 times 1 is 13, and then 3 times 2 is 6. W is 13/6, or really 2 1/6, if you wanted to write it as a mixed number. So now I would like you to do these two. A, we have 2 times y is 7/9. That's like that first example. And B, here we have 5/4 is the same as 5/4 times d. Give you a hint, make sure you do the reciprocal of the side that has a variable. All right, so I'd like you to pause me and solve both of these. So go ahead and pause me now. Well, let's see what you got. On this one, I'm going to write it as a fraction. So 2 over 1 times y is the same as 7/9. I'd multiply by the reciprocal of 2 over 1, which is 1/2, to both sides. And I'm left with 1y, or just y, is, and I'm looking across, they can't be simplified, so 7 times 1 is 7, 9 times 2 is 18. Y is 7/18. Now B here, I'm going to solve, same way. Now here my, variable is on this side. So I need to multiply by the reciprocal over here. Reciprocal of 5/4 is 4/5. And those cross out. So I do the same here. And I'm left with D is the same as, well, I can simplify before I do this one. Those share a factor of 4, and 5 share a factor of 5. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Well, D is 1. So now, again, we have a negative 1 here. I think, again, I'm going to have you solve this one. Negative 20, 27c is the same as 4 9s. Same idea. But you'll notice one thing I did right away, I assigned that negative sign to the numerator. Remember, when you're dealing with fractions, only one part of it is negative. If you make both numerator and denominator negative, that makes it a positive answer because two negatives when you multiply or divide is positive. So I always do that first. So go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal. All right, so let's check this one. And again, I'm just going to quickly go through it. And I'm left with C is the same as, and again, I'm going to simplify before I do it. 9 and 27 share a factor of 9. So that simplifies like that. And 4 and 20, or negative 20, share a factor of 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Negative 20 divided by 4 is negative 5. So now I simplify. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. So your answer is negative 3/5. All right, and this is going to be our final example for the night, and then you are all done. How many 2.5-ton trucks can you place on a rail car that has a carrying capacity of 15 tons? So here, we need to write an equation. All right, we know that each truck is 2.5 tons. We need to know how many of those can be on a rail car if it total holds 15 tons. So if we wanted to write this as an equation, we'd have 2.5, because that's the weight of every single truck, times T, because we don't know how many we can hold, and that's going to equal the capacity of 15 tons. All right, now on this one, this is a mixed number. So our first job is to convert this to an improper fraction. And remember, a quick way to do that, multiply the numerator, or not numerator, denominator by the whole. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So here, 2.5 is really the same as 5 halves T. And that equals 15. Well, if you look at that, now we have exactly what we've been working with. So you solve. You convert, or multiply by the reciprocal, which is 2/5. I'm going to make 15 over 1, so I have a fraction on each side. And simplify, and I get 6. So it can hold a total of 6 trucks. All right, that's tonight's lesson. So in tonight's lesson, we talked about how to solve equations by multiplying fractions, both regular numbers and mixed numbers like this. I realize that we're skipping these two, so you can just cross those off in your notes. Unless, of course, you want to do them for extra practice. If you feel more comfortable doing them, go ahead and do it. I will see you tomorrow in class. Have a good night.